I remember the weight of it in my pocket, a small velvet box that felt like it weighed 50 pounds. It was a Saturday morning, the kind where the light filters through the blinds just right, making everything in our apartment look like it belonged in a home decor magazine. Elena was in the kitchen, humming some song she had heard on the radio, unaware that in exactly 20 minutes I was going to change our lives forever. Or so I thought. We had been together for 6 years, and I had spent 5 of those years convinced she was the only person who would ever truly understand me. I had worked 3 jobs over the course of 14 months to save up for that specific ring. It was a vintage pear-cut diamond, set in rose gold, delicate but substantial. Every time I touched the box, my heart would do this weird, fluttering skip that made it hard to breathe. I walked into the kitchen, my palms sweating, and I saw her standing there in my oversized t-shirt, her hair in a messy bun, pouring coffee into her favorite chipped mug. She looked so perfect and so permanent. I didn't know then that by sunset, I would be standing in the middle of an empty park, clutching that same box while my entire world turned into ash. I had planned this day for months. We were supposed to go to the botanical gardens, find that quiet spot near the willow trees where we had our 3rd date, and I was going to get down on one knee. I had even talked to her sister about it, making sure the timing was right. But as I stood there in the kitchen, watching her, I felt a sudden, sharp chill. She didn't look at me when I walked in. She kept her eyes on the coffee stream, her expression blank, almost robotic. I brushed it off as her just being tired, but looking back, the signs were all there. The way she had been staying late at the office, the way her phone was always face down on the nightstand, the way she had stopped asking me about my day. I was so blinded by the shimmer of that diamond in my pocket that I ignored the darkening clouds right in front of me. "Elena," I said, my voice cracking just a little, "do you want to head out early? The weather is perfect." She finally looked at me, but her eyes were empty. There was no spark, no warmth. She took a slow sip of her coffee and set the mug down on the counter with a soft click. "We need to talk," she said. Those are the 4 worst words in the English language. They are the sound of a guillotine blade dropping. My hand instinctively gripped the box in my pocket. I tried to laugh it off, tried to maintain the illusion for just a few more seconds. Talk about what? The gardens? Because I was thinking we should. She cut me off. "I am leaving, Mark. I am moving out today. I am going to stay with my mother for a while, and then I am finding my own place." It felt like someone had punched the air right out of my lungs. I actually stumbled back against the refrigerator. "Leaving? What are you talking about? We were just talking about vacationing in October. We were fine yesterday." She shook her head, and for the first time I saw a flicker of emotion in her eyes. It was pity. That was worse than anger. "We haven't been fine for a year, Mark. You just haven't been looking. I have been trying to tell you in 1,000 different ways that I am unhappy, that we are drifting, but you are always in your own head. I can't do this anymore. I have already packed my essentials. The rest of my things are in boxes in the guest room. A truck is coming at noon." I stood there, frozen. The ring felt like it was burning a hole through my jeans. I wanted to pull it out. I wanted to show her the proof of my devotion, the physical manifestation of my 6 years of loyalty. I wanted to say, "Look at how much I love you, look at what I sacrificed for us." But the words wouldn't come. Instead, I just watched her walk past me. I heard the sound of her suitcase wheels clicking against the hardwood floor. I heard the front door open and close. And then there was silence. The loudest, most deafening silence I have ever experienced. I didn't go after her. I didn't beg. I just sat down on the kitchen floor and pulled the box out of my pocket. I opened it. The diamond caught a stray beam of sunlight and shattered it into 1,000 tiny rainbows on the white tile. It was beautiful. It was expensive. And it was completely, utterly useless. Most people, when they get dumped right before a proposal, return the ring. They take it back to the jeweler, take the restocking fee hit, and try to recoup whatever they can to pay off their credit cards or go on a bender to forget. But I couldn't do it. Every time I looked at the ring, I didn't see a failed relationship. I saw the version of myself that was capable of working 80 hours a week to provide something beautiful for someone else. I saw the guy who believed in forever. Returning, it felt like admitting that guy was dead. So I kept it. I tucked the box into the back of my sock drawer, hidden under a pair of thick wool hiking socks I never wore. I told myself it was an investment. I told myself I would sell it when the market was better. But deep down, I kept it because it was the only thing I had left of the life I thought I was building. Months passed. My life became a blur of work and silence. My friends tried to set me up on dates, but I wasn't interested. How do you start over when you are still carrying the physical weight of a promise that was never made? I would come home to my quiet apartment, and sometimes, after a few drinks, I would pull the box out. I would sit on my bed and just stare at the ring. It became a sort of ritual, a way to punish myself, or maybe a way to remind myself that I was still capable of wanting something that much. Then, about 8 months after Alina left, I saw her. I was at a grocery store 3 towns over, a place I never went, but I had been driving aimlessly and needed a gallon of milk. I saw her in the produce aisle, picking out apples. She looked happy. She looked lighter, as if the weight I had been carrying had been transferred from her shoulders to mine. And beside her was a man. He was tall, wearing a tailored suit, laughing at something she said. He reached out and brushed a stray hair from her forehead, and the way she looked at him was a way she hadn't looked at me in years. I hid behind a display of cereal boxes, my heart hammering against my ribs. I felt a surge of hot, bitter jealousy, but underneath that was a cold, hard realization. She had moved on before she even left the apartment. The "we need to talk" conversation wasn't a beginning of a process. It was the final period at the end of a long, miserable sentence. I walked out of the store without the milk, drove home in a trance, and went straight to the sock drawer. I pulled out the ring. I was going to throw it away. I was going to drive to the bridge and toss it into the river like a scene from a bad movie. I needed it gone. I needed the ghost out of my house. But as I held it, I realized that throwing it away was just another dramatic gesture, another way of letting her define my actions. I decided right then that I was going to sell it, but I wasn't going to use the money for something boring like rent or debt. I was going to do something that was just for me. The next day, I went to a high-end jeweler in the city. Not the place where I bought it, I couldn't go back there, but a place that specialized in estate pieces. The man behind the counter was old, with spectacles that made his eyes look enormous. He took the ring, put a loop to his eye, and examined it for what felt like an hour. "This is a very fine stone," he said, his voice like dry parchment. "Rare cut for this clarity. Why are you selling it?" I looked him straight in the eye and said, "Because the person it was meant for doesn't exist anymore." He nodded slowly, as if he had heard that exact sentence 1,000 times. He offered me a price that was significantly less than what I paid, but still a small fortune. I took it. I walked out of that shop with a check that felt like a ticket to a new life. I didn't buy a car. I didn't go on a luxury cruise. I used the money to quit my soul-crushing corporate job and enroll in a specialized carpentry program I had dreamed about since I was a teenager. I had always loved working with my hands, but Alina had always pushed me toward the stable path of office work and promotions. With the ring money as my safety net, I spent a year learning how to build furniture. I spent my days covered in sawdust, my hands calloused and sore, and for the first time in my adult life, I was genuinely satisfied. I started a small business out of a garage, building custom dining tables. There was something poetic about it, taking raw, broken pieces of wood and turning them into something that people would gather around to share their lives. 2 years went by. My business was growing. I had moved into a small house with a real workshop in the back. I rarely thought about Alina, and when I did, the sting was gone. It was just a memory of a different person I used to be. Then I got a message on social media. It was from her. My heart did a familiar skip, but this time it wasn't out of love. It was out of curiosity. She wanted to know if we could meet for coffee. She said she had seen some of my work online and was proud of me. I hesitated for 3 days before I replied. We met at a small cafe near my shop. She looked the same, but older, more tired. The man from the grocery store was nowhere to be seen. We sat across from each other, and the conversation was polite, superficial. She told me she had broken up with the guy 6 months ago. She told me she missed our old life sometimes. And then she asked the question I knew was coming. "Mark, I have to know, what did you do with the ring? I know you bought one. My sister told me you were planning to propose that day." I took a slow sip of my coffee, feeling the warmth of it. I looked at her, and I didn't see the woman I wanted to spend my life with. I saw a stranger who happened to know my history. "I kept it for a long time," I said. "I thought about throwing it in the river. I thought about keeping it forever as a reminder of what I lost. But in the end, I traded it for a life I actually like." She looked confused, then a little hurt. You sold it? I nodded. I sold it to become the person I am now. If I had given it to you, we both would have ended up miserable in a house we couldn't afford, pretending to be people we aren't. That ring was the price of my freedom, Alina. And honestly, it was the best deal I ever made. She didn't say much after that. We finished our coffee, said our goodbyes, and I walked back to my shop. I had a table to finish, a large, sturdy oak piece for a young couple who were just starting out. As I sanded the grain of the wood, I realized that keeping the ring wasn't about holding onto her. It was about holding onto the part of myself that was willing to invest in a future. I just had to learn that the future I was investing in didn't have to include her. But the story doesn't end with a clean break and a successful business. Life is rarely that tidy. About a month after that coffee meeting, I was closing up the shop for the night when a woman walked in. She was looking for a custom bench for her garden. We started talking, and for the first time in years, I felt a genuine connection that didn't feel forced or desperate. Her name was Clara. She was an architect, sharp-witted, and she had a laugh that filled the entire workshop. We started seeing each other, and it was easy. It wasn't the frantic, obsessive love I had with Alina. It was steady. It was grounded. One night while we were sitting on the porch of my house, she asked me about my past. I told her everything. I told her about the ring, the heartbreak, the career change, and the coffee with Alina. Clara listened in silence, her eyes fixed on the stars. Do you ever regret it? She asked. Regret keeping it? No, I said. I regret the time I spent thinking my value was tied to someone else's acceptance of me. The ring was just a rock. The real value was in the lesson it taught me. She reached out and took my hand. I am glad you kept it, she whispered. Because if you hadn't, you wouldn't be this version of yourself. And I really like this version. It was a perfect moment. But as the months turned into a year, and then 2, I found myself in a familiar position. I wanted to propose to Clara, but this time I didn't have a safety net. I didn't have a windfall of cash from a sold asset. I was a small business owner, and while I was doing well, I wasn't wealthy. I started saving again, but it was different this time. I wasn't working 3 jobs out of desperation. I was putting aside money from every table I sold, every bench I crafted. It was slow going. One afternoon, I went back to the same estate jeweler where I had sold Alina's ring. The old man was still there, looking even more like a wise owl. I want to buy a ring, I said. He looked at me, squinting through his spectacles. The carpenter, he said, recognizing me. You sold a pear-cut diamond here a few years back. I smiled. Yes, that was me. He led me to a display case in the back, away from the flashy, modern pieces. I have something you might like, he said. He pulled out a tray of vintage rings. There in the center was a ring that took my breath away. It wasn't a diamond. It was a deep forest green emerald, surrounded by tiny, delicate pearls in a yellow gold setting. It looked like something that belonged in a fairy tale, something that had grown out of the earth itself. How much? I asked. He named a price that was exactly to the penny the amount of money I had saved up over the last 18 months. It was as if the universe had been keeping a ledger. I bought it on the spot. But as I walked out of the shop, I felt a strange sensation. It wasn't the heavy, anxious weight I had felt with the first ring. It was light. It was right. I proposed to Clara a week later, not in a botanical garden or some staged location, but in the middle of my workshop, surrounded by the smell of cedar and the tools of my trade. I told her that my life had been built on the ruins of a previous one, and that I wanted her to be the heart of everything I built from here on out. She said yes before I even finished the sentence. The wedding was small, held in the backyard of our house. My friends were there, my family was there, and for a moment, I thought about how different my life would have been if Alina had said yes that morning in the kitchen. I would probably still be in that office, wearing a tie I hated, living a life that was a beautiful lie. I realized that the ring I had kept wasn't just a piece of jewelry, it was a pivot point. It was the moment I stopped being a passenger in my own life. A few years later, Clara and I were cleaning out the attic when she found an old, dusty box. Inside was a single, crumpled receipt from the jeweler where I had sold the first ring. She looked at it, then at me. This is it, isn't it? The receipt for the life we have now. I took the paper from her and looked at the numbers. It was just a piece of paper, but it represented the moment I chose myself over a fantasy. I decided to frame that receipt. It hangs in my workshop now, a small, faded reminder that sometimes The things we lose are exactly what we need to find ourselves. People often ask me for advice on relationships, and I always tell them the same thing. Don't be afraid to keep the ring, but be brave enough to sell it when the time comes. Because at the end of the day, a ring is just a circle. It can be a cage, or it can be a foundation. It all depends on what you do with it after the person you thought was your forever walks out the door. I look at Clara, I look at our daughter playing in the grass, and I look at the furniture I create with my own 2 hands. I kept the ring, and in doing so, I kept my future. And honestly, I wouldn't change a single second of the pain it took to get here. There was one final twist to the story that I never saw coming. About 5 years into my marriage with Clara, I received a package in the mail. There was no return address, just a postmark from a city halfway across the country. Inside was a small velvet box. My heart stopped for a beat. I opened it, and there, resting on the white silk, was the pear-cut diamond ring I had sold all those years ago. There was a note tucked into the lid. It said, "I saw this in a shop window and knew it was yours. You told me you traded it for a life you liked. I wanted you to have it back, not as a memory of us, but as a trophy for the man you became. I don't need it where I am going." It was signed with a single letter, E. I sat there for a long time, holding the ring. It didn't have power over me anymore. It didn't make me sad, and it didn't make me angry. It was just a beautiful object. I realized that Alina had finally found her own peace, her own way of closing the circle. I didn't sell it this time. I didn't hide it in a sock drawer. I took it to my workshop, melted down the gold, and used the diamond to create a necklace for our daughter. I wanted her to wear something that represented resilience, something that showed that even when things are broken and sold and scattered, they can be brought back together into something even more beautiful. That necklace is her favorite thing to wear. She calls it her star. And every time I see it catch the light, I am reminded that the stories we tell ourselves about our failures are often just the first chapters of our greatest successes. I often wonder what happened to the man Alina was with that day in the grocery store. I wonder if she ever found the kind of grounded, steady love I found with Clara. I hope she did. But more than that, I am grateful for the no that felt like the end of the world. Because that no was the loudest yes the universe ever gave me. I kept the ring, I sold the ring, and then the ring came back to me. It traveled through different hands, different shops, and different years, only to end up exactly where it belonged, not as a symbol of a broken promise, but as a legacy for the next generation. My life is full of the things I have built, the wood I have shaped, and the love I have nurtured. And it all started with a velvet box in my pocket on a Saturday morning when everything I thought I knew was stripped away, leaving only the diamond-hard truth of who I was meant to be. The process of building my business wasn't just about learning how to use a lathe or a chisel. It was about rebuilding my own sense of worth. When you are with someone for 6 years and they walk out without a second thought, it does something to your brain. You start to think that maybe you are defective, like a piece of wood with a hidden knot that makes it structurally unsound. For the first year after the breakup, I was that knotted piece of wood. I was brittle. I would snap at the smallest things. But as I spent more time in the workshop, I realized that knots aren't defects. They are character. They are the parts of the tree that had to grow around a branch, the parts that had to endure more pressure. They are actually the strongest parts of the wood. Once I understood that, I stopped trying to hide my scars and started using them as the focal points of my designs. My dining tables became famous for their imperfections. I would find slabs of walnut or cherry that other carpenters would reject because they had cracks or unusual grain patterns. I would fill those cracks with gold resin, making the flaw the most beautiful part of the piece. People loved it. They told me that the tables felt real, like they had a history. It was a metaphor for my life that I lived every single day. When the ring came back to me from Alina, I saw it through that same lens. It was a knot in my history. It was a point of pressure. And instead of letting it break me, I grew around it. The necklace I made for my daughter isn't just jewelry. It is a piece of art made from a reclaimed life. Clara and I have been married for 12 years now. Our house is filled with furniture I have made, each piece a witness to a different stage of our growth. There is the first bench we sat on, the crib our daughter slept in, and the massive oak table where we host Thanksgiving every year. Sometimes, when the house is quiet and the sun is setting, I sit at that table and run my fingers over the grain. I think about that younger version of myself, the one standing in the kitchen with a ring in his pocket and a heart full of illusions. I wish I could go back and tell him that it is going to be okay. I wish I could tell him that the pain he is about to feel is the best thing that will ever happen to him. But he wouldn't have believed me. He had to live through the silence. He had to feel the weight of the box in the sock drawer. He had to make the choice to sell it and start over. The ring taught me that nothing is ever truly lost. It just changes form. Energy, love, even heartbreak, it all just gets recycled into something else. Alina's departure wasn't a loss. It was a redistribution of energy. It freed her to find what she was looking for, and it freed me to find what I actually needed. The fact that she sent the ring back years later tells me she understood that too. It was her way of saying that she recognized the value of what we had, even if it wasn't meant to last. It was a final, silent apology and a blessing all wrapped into one. And now, as my daughter grows up, she wears that diamond around her neck. She doesn't know the story yet. She is too young to understand the complexities of adult heartbreak, but she knows it is special. She knows it came from a place of deep history. When she is old enough, I will tell her the whole story. I will tell her about the man who worked 3 jobs, the woman who walked out, and the jeweler with the giant spectacles. I will tell her that sometimes you have to lose the thing you love most to find the person you were always meant to be. I will tell her that keeping the ring was the hardest thing I ever did, but letting it go was the smartest. And I will tell her that no matter what happens in her life, she should never be afraid of the no's, because they are just clearing the path for the yes that actually matters. My life isn't perfect, but it is mine. I built it with my own hands, funded by the ghost of a proposal that never happened. And in the end, that is a much better story than the one I had planned to tell in the botanical gardens all those years ago. The workshop is quiet now. The tools are put away, the floor is swept, and the smell of sawdust lingers in the air. I look at the framed receipt on the wall one last time before I turn out the light. It is just a scrap of paper, but to me, it is a map. It shows where I was, where I went, and how I got home. I walk back to the house, where Clara is waiting with a glass of wine and a book. Our daughter is asleep, the diamond star resting against her chest. I sit down on the porch, breathe in the cool night air, and smile. I kept the ring, and because I did, I have everything I ever wanted. The weight in my pocket is gone, replaced by the warmth of a life well lived. And that, more than any diamond, is what forever actually looks like. I think back to the day of that coffee with Alina. I remember the feeling of walking away from that cafe. It was the first time I felt like I wasn't waiting for something to happen. For years, I had been waiting for her to come back, waiting for the business to succeed, waiting for the hurt to stop. But that afternoon, as I walked back to my shop, I realized that I wasn't waiting anymore. I was just being. I was a man who made tables. I was a man who had survived. I was a man who had turned a symbol of rejection into a symbol of rebirth. That shift in perspective is the most valuable thing I own. It is more expensive than the pear-cut diamond and more durable than the oak I work with every day. People often get caught up in the tragedy of the almost. Almost married, almost successful, almost happy. They see the almost as a failure. But I have learned that the almost is where the magic happens. It is the space between what we thought we wanted and what we actually needed. If I had married Alina, I would have had a life of almost. I would have almost been the man she wanted. I would have almost been happy. By losing her, I lost the almost and found the is. My life is not an almost. It is a reality. It is a solid, tangible thing that I can touch and feel and share with people I love. And I owe it all to a small velvet box that stayed in a sock drawer just long enough to teach me what it was really worth. I sometimes wonder if the jeweler knew. That old man with the spectacles, did he see it in my face when I first sold the ring? Did he know that I was trading it for a new version of myself? I think he did. There was a look in his eyes, a kind of weary wisdom that suggested he had seen many men like me. Men who were desperate to shed their skin and become someone else. He didn't just give me a check, he gave me a clean slate. And when I went back to buy Clara's ring, he recognized that I had finally grown into that slate. He saw that I wasn't looking for a trophy anymore. I was looking for a partner. The emerald he sold me wasn't about status or sacrifice. It was about growth. It was green, like the trees I work with, like the life I was building. The diamond star around my daughter's neck is a reminder of all these things. It is a reminder that we are all just works in progress, being shaped by the world around us. Sometimes the shaping is painful. Sometimes it involves being cut and polished and set into a life we didn't choose. But if we are patient, and if we are brave enough to keep what matters and sell what doesn't, we end up exactly where we are supposed to be. I am a carpenter. I am a husband. I am a father. And I am the man who kept the ring. It is a good story. It is a true story. And most importantly, it is a story that has a happy ending. Not because everything went according to plan, but because I was willing to change the plan when it didn't work. As I sit here on the porch, watching the fireflies dance in the yard, I feel a deep sense of peace. The past is a country I no longer live in, but I keep the map in a frame on my wall just to remember the terrain. I think about Alina, somewhere out there, and I hope she found her peace too. I think about the ring, once a symbol of an unmade promise, now a star around a little girl's neck. Everything is as it should be. The circle is complete. And as the night closes in, I am grateful for the darkness, because without it, I never would have seen the stars. I kept the ring, I kept the lesson, and in the end, I kept myself. That is the only proposal that ever really mattered. I am finally exactly where I belong, sitting on a porch I built, looking at a life that started with a no and turned into the most beautiful yes I could ever imagine. The diamond is just a rock, but the story is everything. And this story is mine. I look at the stars and realize they are just like the diamonds, shining because they are under immense pressure, billions of miles away, yet close enough to light the way home. My journey was long and the path was winding, but every step was worth it. Every tear, every hour of overtime, and every moment of doubt led to this porch, this peace, and this life. I am at home, I am whole, and I am finally truly free. The ring is gone, but the man it made remains, and he is more than enough. He is exactly who he was always meant to be. The end of the story is just the beginning of everything else. I take a final sip of wine, breathe in the night air, and let the silence of the workshop and the house wrap around me like a warm blanket. I am content. I am settled. I am home. And I know with absolute certainty that keeping that ring was the best decision I ever made, not for what it was, but for what it allowed me to become. The weight is gone, the light remains, and the future is as wide and open as the sky above me. I am ready for whatever comes next because I know I can build something beautiful out of whatever life gives me. That is the true gift of the ring. That is the true legacy of my story. And it is more than enough for a lifetime. I close my eyes and listen to the sounds of my home, the soft breathing of my family, the rustle of the leaves, the quiet heartbeat of a life built on truth. This is my forever. This is my diamond, and I am never letting go of this feeling. It is the only thing that is truly mine. The ring was just the beginning. The life is the prize, and I have one.